Hey, we're the monkeys. Welcome to Boles TV. This is BOLES.television. It's BOLES.TV. Now, forgive me, I just have to do one little thing here. I have to turn on the... Okay, just checking if the sound is working, because as you know, as part of this show, every time something changes, there's an update to something, everything just goes kablooey. And we have a nice machine, we have the best equipment, we have the nicest lights. And today, for some reason, starting everything up, the microphone was trying to be used by my system as the microphone for the secondary camera that I use to log into Windows with my face. Now, why my system decided to use the Logitech Brio for my microphone, I don't know. Because I have a microphone and it's right here, and it's an Elgato Wave 3, which is a dedicated microphone, which is going to give you better sound, we hope, than a webcam microphone. So we are hopeful that everything is going to work out just fine. The camera did not seem to go kablunky, which is what usually happens, but I did have to reset all my audio. Now, my system was running a little sluggishly last week, so I got really smart and did some research and said, well, if you have too many startup items, then your machine's just not going to work very well. It's going to be slow. So I, got rid of some startup items, and in Windows it'll say, there's no impact if this runs, or heavy impact, or medium impact. So I kind of, tried to turn off some of the more heavy impact. And when I did that, I thought everything was working fine until I started the machine this morning to make sure everything was working, and, microphones had been replaced, things were removed. I guess I learned my lesson. Don't mess with stuff if you don't know what it's going to do. I didn't think it was going to do anything, but obviously it did something, because it's all upside down and backward. But I figured it out, and we are now successfully, it seems so far, today, streaming. Although we did just do a little test here. I'm going to send a little test message, just 3Ds, and see if it shows up on our stream. Oh, there it is. On our Boles brand account, which is sort of like a bot account that we use to manage some features, because the other account posted a little something and it didn't show. So I thought, well, maybe that's broken. But now we know with the DDD, it's not broken. It's just fine. Let's be a little more specific. Hello, world! Okay. That's a little bit better. And we know it's all working. Well, as you may be able to see, I'm wearing my SAG-AFTRA shirt today, because we're in the middle of a writer's strike, we're in the middle of an actor's strike against the demons of Hollywood. And of course it's all about money, and some of it's about respect, and most of it's about money, and who gets paid what, and on what scale, and what people don't deserve, what they hope that they think they should deserve. So we're going to take a little look today. Maybe I should adjust this camera a little bit. It seems a little bit tiny, a smidge high. But maybe I shouldn't mess with stuff that I don't know what's going to happen. Unintended consequences. Well, at least you can see the shirt now. Now I have to sit up straight. Okay, go back. Ugly as his ugly does. I think Forrest Gump said that. So, hey, here we go. Oh, by the way, before we start, this is my black t-shirt in support of the strike. And I read the other day that the color black has a history in New York City. Now, people from outside of New York City say, oh, everyone in New York wears black, which is sort of true. And they think it's because, oh, they're East Coast, they're chic, they always want to look, scary. Oh, it's because theater people, you have to wear blacks, which is what they call just clothes that are black on stage if you're on a stage crew, and you don't want to be seen. So that's why so many people in New York wear black, because they're theater people. And I was reading a little bit of a history of New York City, and actually the wearing black thing is more interesting than, theatrical. Because 100 years ago, as New York City was becoming a wonderful place to live, you had a lot of trains, you had some cars starting, you had horses, the Industrial Revolution, things were changing, and New York City has always been a very compressed place with lots of transportation. And transportation, especially back then, tended to be, coal, sooty, filthy. And back then, a lot of the women wore dresses that were not easy to clean. It's not like they just put on a t-shirt and walked out the door. It was a big process of getting dressed in the morning, no matter what your social status was. So it was sort of realized and invented that in New York City, if you wore black, it hid the soot from the trains, from the boats, from the industrial smokestacks, better than, white or a light color. So black, there were horses and dirt roads and garbage and filth. Some people say not a lot of things have changed. But the wonderful thing about black is that it holds all colors. Black is all colors. So it tended back then to be the cleanest color you could wear because it wasn't that affected by all that filthy dirt in the air and all around you. And so it just kind of stuck around. In New York City, you wear black because you don't want to wash your clothes every day, and you have pretty dresses, and you can't wash them every day because you'll ruin them. So just put on black and, dust yourself off at the end of the day and live to wear another piece of black the next day. Sort of ingenious, really. And so I guess that tradition of dressing in black because of the industry and the soot and coal just sort of carried over and stuck around, and now it's become, iconic and modern and sort of chic, but its history is that of self-preservation and being very smart and trying to save money and time by not, let's say, wearing white everywhere. Because white gets dirty really fast. You don't see a lot of people wearing white in New York City, especially not on a hot, sticky, icky day when you're all sweaty and all the bits of junk and jerkiness come and land on you. It's not a very pretty sight. So, hey, speaking of the actors' strike, what's going on with that? Now, the actors have been on strike for maybe a couple of weeks. The writers have been on strike since May. May to June, June to July. 2 months, 3 months, they're there. And the terrible idea of the producers is we're not going to have any negotiations with anybody until October, the end of October. Because by that time, that'll be like, May, June, July, August, September, October, 5, 6 months. People will be running out of money. They'll be running out of savings. They'll lose their house. They can't pay rent. They're going to be evicted. And when they're in that state of mind, then we can go in there and just offer them slop for a contract, and they'll take it because what choice do they have? That is the attitude that's going on in Hollywood, which is why actors and writers are standing up and saying, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to have a little bit of respect. And this may be the last best chance for labor, the writers and the actors, to get a contract that sort of protects their workspace, protects their future, because, as we discussed last time, AI is coming for them and coming for everybody. And if there's one thing you can say about television shows, especially the modern shows, is they are formulaic. They have a beginning, a middle, and end. Go back to Aristotle's Poetics. Plot, character, thought, diction, music, spectacle. They're all lined up. They're all ready to go. And all you have to do really is fill in the blanks. And that may sound formulaic, and it is, but that's how computers run. So if you're AI and you want to write a script, and you're programming the AI, and you're one person, and you're going to have your AI, write all the scripts for a season, you just say, here's the plot structure. I want this to happen then and that to happen here. And you let the AI script it all out. And then you kind of look over it and, make it interesting or put in a couple of jokes or two, and you're done. That's really where all of this is going to end up going. Now, maybe the writers and actors can delay that by a few years, but let's say 5 years, 10 years. After that, then what? How are you going to say that you can write a script better than AI when it's just all formula? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And sure, structures change. 100 years ago, when you went to the Shakespeare Festival, the shows were 5 acts long. You had Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5. And you would take a break between acts, and it would be a whole evening. Now people won't sit still that long. We used to have a 3-act structure when I was young, 50 years ago. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Now it's down to 2 acts, Act 1, Act 2, and I'm done, I'm walking home. And now the latest thing is 1 act. A movie in a single sitting. You used to go to the movies and you'd have a break in between. You'd have an intermission, and you'd get up and go to the bathroom and buy some more popcorn and some more soda. More pop, because you already ate yours. Well, we don't do intermissions really in movies very much anymore. You watch old-time movies, you'll see intermission, break time, built into the movie. Not today. So it becomes much more difficult trying to figure out how all of this is going to work out, because attention spans are slipping. People are used to the instant gratification of being able to watch, a TV show, 10 episodes, all in one sitting. They'll watch 10 hours of TV straight so they don't have to wait 10 weeks to watch a show in its entirety. That is changing the status of the entertainment industry as well. And it's sort of a difficult thing to try to figure out, is where are we going to go in all of this? How is all this going to work out for us? It's a frightening time. And, if you're a, sort of well-known television writer with a history and reputation, past 5 years, you could make $350,000 a year. And people who are making that kind of money don't want to give it up. They want to keep it going. But streaming, the changes in broadcast television, cable TV, all of that is changing, and it's going to be a very difficult road. Now, here's the one thing I don't understand. If you're on strike, how can you, as a union, allow shows to continue to be made and to be in production? I think that's not a good idea. And I'm not saying they're setting up to be scab performances, but it feels that way. And here we go. They don't call them scabs, they call them interim waivers. SAG-AFTRA interim agreements, list of movies and series granted waivers, which means you can continue filming, working in the middle of a strike. Now, I would think if you're going to call a strike, you shut everything down. You shut every part of the industry down you can. No waivers, nothing granted, no interim nothing agreed to until we have a signed deal. Because otherwise, you're going to be knickered, sliced up 1,000 times by all of these smaller events that you allow to move forward. Well, here we go. Look at this. Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman produced Civil War spy series The Gray House lands a SAG-AFTRA interim agreement, which means they can continue doing their show. Well, how does that help? It helps the people employed, but it doesn't help you win a strike. Because you're undercutting yourself by allowing them to have this interim agreement and waiver. Here's another one. Hallmark. The Hallmark Channel. When Calls the Heart awarded, right, interesting turn of phrase there, awarded a SAG-AFTRA interim agreement. So Hallmark carries on, soldiers on, in the middle of a strike. Oh, we have a waiver. We have an interim agreement. The strike doesn't affect us, doesn't apply to us. We're continuing on business as usual. Why? Another one, Glenn Close. An indie movie, The Summer Book, is the latest film's given a SAG-AFTRA waiver. Interim agreement. Now, Glenn Close is a big star. You think she would close down production and say, well, I'm not moving forward. If my brothers and sisters can't act and get paid, I'm not doing it either. Even though I might be able to, maybe I can get an interim agreement. Maybe I can get a waiver. But I won't do it because I'm Glenn Close. Didn't happen. So we go up to the original article and we click through and we see, oh, look at this. Look at this. SAG-AFTRA launched a strike against Hollywood studios on July the 14th. Interim agreements program is one that allows independent productions with no direct ties to members of the Alliance of Motion Picture Television Producers to continue filming. I say if you're going to shut down one angle, shut down all angles. The Guild has been adding to the list of projects granted waivers since soon after it went on strike. I guess the AMPTP after failing to agree on a new film and TV contract. Prominent projects include, so far, Angel Studios' Bible-based The Chosen, the A24 films Mother Mary, and I Dream of Unicorns, and Apple TV's Tyrone. Actors able to continue working under these agreements. Oh, isn't that sweet? Anne Hathaway, Dakota Fanning, big stars now, Glenn Close, James Badge Dale, Ben Foster, Graham Greene, and Melissa Lowe, among others. So it doesn't sound right, it doesn't fit right that these actors can work and those actors over there can't work. It's confusing to people who don't know any better. They say, oh, there's no strike, it's been fixed because Glenn Close is working on a movie. And it doesn't help people who have intimate knowledge of knowing what's going on because the people who can't work are saying, well, why can you work on an independent show, but I can't work because I'm on broadcast television? I mean, are you standing together or are you divided and falling separately? The answer seems to be you're falling separately. And here's a list of all these films that have waivers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and we're only in the D's, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. We're now in J's. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Those are the movies. And the series are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ah! Ah! Somebody explain it to me. Are we on strike or are we not striking? Well, we're striking some places, but other places are just fine. But people are still working and they're making product. They're filling the pipeline. Aren't we supposed to shut everything down so there's nothing new coming out? Well, these are side agreements. Well, if they're side agreements and they don't apply, then where's the waiver coming in? Where's the interim agreement coming in? Well, because the actors are part of the guild, they have to get our approval to do a side project. I mean, it's complete and absolute madness. If you're an actor, if you're a writer, sit down, put down your pen, and cross your arms. Don't do anything. Nobody does anything. And that's my take so far on the writers' strike. Now we're going to take a very brief intermission, returning to you in 60 seconds. Be right back. And hey, we're back here on Boles.tv. It's Boles.television. So, something that's very interesting to me is we're talking about the writer's strike. Is there's a reason people are actors. Okay. Now, if you're on strike, you should be on a picket line, protesting somewhere to let it be known. And sometimes, if you're on a strike picket line, you get strike pay. Now, it's usually not very much. $100 a day, $500 a week. And so for some people, maybe that's enough, important to get paid. Are they there 24 hours a day? No. But it'll be interesting to see how long a picket line lasts because actors are known to not be 9 to 5 people. They tend to have very crazy hours. They're very creative. They don't like to be told what to do. And unless it's vitally important and they're getting a lot of money, they don't want to be told where to go and how to stand. So it'll be interesting to see how long, if this, strike lasts into October. The latest thing I heard this morning is they're saying there's not really even going to be talks of an agreement until early 2024 because they need to sort of drain the pipeline of these shows that are coming up that are people involved in using. Yeah, right? Okay, that's a problem. So they have to drain the pipeline so there's no new product coming out of it. But with all these waivers and affiliate agreements or whatever, will it ever dry up? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all turns out, and I hope that the actors will be able to sustain a picket line and go and protest and do all of those important things. We'll see how it all happens in the end. Now, we're going to have an interesting conversation. Speaking about, standing up for yourself, your rights, getting things done. Here's an interesting article that was shared yesterday from the Examiner News. A follow-up investigation, state program for disabled people accused. A state program for disabled people accused of mistreating a deaf employee. An investigative enterprise opinion. This is the third installment of a series about impacting people with disabilities. At risk of burying the lead, forgive me, this person writes, as I start to move forward toward the beginning and work my way to the headline, eventually getting to how a program designed to help disabled people get jobs is allegedly mistreating an employee with a disability. So there is Access VR. This author chronicled some troubling and significant flaws in the organization, problems with local White Plains office, but also a statewide warts in the program. As a quick refresher, Access VR, which stands for Adult Career and Continuing Education Services, Vocational Rehabilitation, is tasked with helping people with disabilities not just secure jobs, but develop and nurture careers. It's a wonderful sort of thing. But it appears that there is a problem. And here are some of the takeaways from this article. The department's toxic workplace culture demoralizes staff, leading to poor service. A federal law creates a counterproductive incentive system for counselors. Lack of hey, there's Jana Marie. Hi, Jana Marie. Jana says she was just talking to a union rep about the article, and this is the third article that has been published about Access VR. Well, that's wonderful and also concerning. It's wonderful that it's getting discussed and concerning that it needs to be discussed. Internal strife between management and the union has damaged an already dysfunctional agency. The state cites its own misguided rules to justify bureaucratic breakdowns and explain program flaws. 300 counselors serve 50,000 people across the state of New York, and a full third of the 300 are currently eligible for retirement. Oh boy. So this is a very detailed, very interesting article. I will put the link to it in our live links on our Discord server. Here is our Discord server address in case you want to say hey ho and go there later after the show. Read this article. It's very disconcerting because you wonder, a program that is there to help disabled people find jobs, and they like to hire disabled people to help disabled people find jobs, are getting disappointed by the able-bodied, the ableist idea of what needs to be done in order to best serve a disabled person. Jeff Mooney, a vocational rehabilitation counselor assistant, who also happens to be deaf, has accused the state to discriminate against him based on his disability, ultimately leading him to file a formal complaint last month claiming retaliation. Mooney details 6 specific dates between May 9 and June 20 when he believes his discrimination occurred. The claim was formally made against the state's Director of Diversity and Access. Mooney, affiliated with the same New York City office as another person who also posted a complaint, had been previously granted what's known as a reasonable accommodation, which included having a full-time interpreter present to assist him in his role. He received the approval in May 20 and 21 to secure a full-time interpreter, but the interpreter did not start until last November, with the state citing paperwork issues to explain a delay that spanned a year and a half. Why that took so long, I have no idea, Mooney commented in a phone interview last week, facilitated through an interpreter. The process is typically about a week to 2 weeks. But once Mooney started working with the full-time interpreter, he began to flourish, achieving a new professional growth. Once we had an interpreter here, everything was great because I felt like I was on equity with my colleagues, the other people in my same role, my position. I was learning more. However, Mooney was ultimately informed that the interpreter could not be solely dedicated to him, leading to what he says is a decrease in support during crucial job responsibilities. Following the decision from the central office, adjustments have been made to your reasonable accommodation, the district manager office of Access VR's Manhattan office said in a follow-up response. As outlined in the letter, in-house interpreting has been authorized for specific purposes, including meetings with participants, training sessions, and select meetings and orientations. I acknowledge the significance of allowing you to choose your preferred interpreter. Given any annual review process, Mooney pointed out how, despite gaining authorization for the full-time interpreter in 2021, he'd only received the service for less than a year. He also claims that he's being picked on, including the nature of his work assignments, noting how he's been tasked with office assistant duties. That's a demotion, he wrote in a complaint to the state, detailing a series of concerning encounters. While Mooney described multiple issues at multiple meetings, an especially troubling incident emerged when Mooney requested an interpreter during a remote session in May. The request was allegedly denied, and he had difficulties understanding the conversation. Seeing the debate over the reasonable accommodation aside, Gleason, the other person, stressed how it's true the disregard for the internal policy is the most serious issue at play. Mooney said in a July 6 email, I did not give HR permission to discuss my reasonable accommodation with anyone but the HR representative and management, and had me attend previously mentioned meeting with them all. Mooney also cited concerns about the handling of his accommodation renewal request. In what seems like a bureaucracy run amok at best, Mooney said he was given a healthcare provider form to fill out and told to obtain a note from a doctor in order to prove he's still deaf. You don't get healed from being deaf, Mooney remarked in our phone interview. That's not going to change. So the doctor filled out the form, I submitted it, and then they sent me another email saying that we need you to have a kind of release form, allowing us to talk to your doctor directly to make sure that you're really deaf and to verify your eligibility. No decision has been made at this time to renew Mooney's interpreter request. When trying to rationalize its sometimes bumbling and baffling actions, too many state officials seem to point critics to its own rules in order to justify its rules. The twisted logic goes like this. How can we possibly renew your reasonable accommodation seamlessly given the fact that our rules require us to make you jump through hoops? Mooney says, I was told I could not use my reasonable accommodation for a meeting, even though my reasonable accommodation was present. Mooney wrote in a portion of one email to the state's diversity department on July 6. Would you tell a person in a wheelchair to come to a meeting, but they couldn't use their wheelchair? Even though a virtual interpreter was provided, anyone who knows interpreting knows that's a huge disadvantage compared to having an interpreter in the same room as you, and especially one that understands my gestures and meaning and convey others what I need to understand, and they can understand me. Mooney said, I'm depressed all the time now. He also said that he's never received any demerits about his work performance. My anxiety is up. I have trouble sleeping. I cannot focus. I always have a headache. I just feel like many times when they use a random interpreter, they schedule once in a while. Sometimes they don't even show up. So it makes it easier to have an interpreter who's dependable and who is here. The author asked Mooney about the nature of his earlier efforts to get the situation resolved, and he described a follow-up meeting with management in more detail. An unfamiliar woman with HR was unexpectedly present. I go in there with my interpreter, Mooney recalled. The woman on the screen, I'd never met her before. I had no idea who she was. My interpreter sat down, I sat down, and they started yelling at me. She says, well, we can't afford to pay for a full-time interpreter. We spent over $1 million in all these things. And I was like, wait a second, who are you? I don't even know who you are. You didn't introduce yourself. Correspondences reviewed by the author. The Office for Diversity and Access advised Mooney that there's no internal process to object to reasonable accommodation decisions. Additionally, your allegations of discrimination has been referred for an internal investigation. Mooney did file a recent complaint with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, and also alerted the National Association of the Deaf, a civil rights organization, about his concerns. As for the complaint Mooney filed with the state, Gleason said the internal investigation is laughable on its face. They're doing an investigation, which afterwards I realized they're investigating themselves. So that is a very interesting take on what's happening in New York State, where disabled people are allegedly being discriminated against by the state of New York when their job is to help find disabled people jobs. Very interesting and very extremely bizarre. Now we're going to finish the show with a discussion of They Cloned Tyrone. Now, this is on Netflix. And, every week we look at Netflix and see what's new, if there's anything fun. They have a lot of foreign language movies that we love to watch. And They Cloned Tyrone, I think on Friday, was listed as the #1 movie on Netflix. So it's like, oh, okay. And what's his name? John Boyega? Star Wars fame is where he got his big superstar fame. Stars in the movie along with Jamie Foxx. And the White Devil. It's the role he plays, Kiefer Sutherland. So this is sort of a strange movie that I found curious in that the plot line is white people trying to poison and control black people. Now, okay, interesting. Have we seen it before? Yes. Are the white people always the bad guy in this sort of movie? Yes. But it's interesting to me that, of the few black movies that I've watched in this sort of genre where the white people are out to hurt black people, keep them down, and they're not traditionally about slavery, but about modern age America. there is just a little strange sense of uncomfortable paranoia. I don't know if it's on my part or on the part of the people putting on the show, but it's a very unwelcoming protest movie where the white guy is always the bad guy. And in this case, it's Kiefer Sutherland. So I didn't find this to be a very interesting movie based on the topic. Very rough, very tough. And it made me think of this movie from 2017, Get Out. Now, this was a very interesting movie. And yes, the white devil is there, stealing the lives and minds of black people. And the black people have their revenge and kill all the white folk. In a nutshell. And as I'm watching Get Out for the first time, back then, it was really very interesting. About culture and blame and sophistication and unsophistication and control and the evolution of a culture. Terrific, terrific movie. Terrifying. And then you go back to They Cloned Tyrone, and you're thinking, this is trying really hard to be the next Get Out. And I guess this movie script had been around for a long time before it was made. And this is the storyline, a pulpy sci-fi mystery caper in which an unlikely trio investigates a series of eerie events, alerting them to a nefarious conspiracy lurking directly beneath their neighborhood. Fontaine, a neighborhood drug dealer, is shot dead by rivals and is then shocked to wake up at his own bed the next morning unharmed. He and Slick Charles and Yo-Yo begin looking into the incident, and their search eventually leads them to a vast underground complex where a government-backed lab is performing experiments on the local black population. And sure, there are black people involved in this terrible corruption scheme, but the bad guy is Kiefer Sutherland. Realizing he's an artificial clone who is being controlled, Fontaine initially feels despair but decides he needs to stand up to these white institutional overlords for the sake of his neighborhood. Okay, so it gets a little preachy. It gets a little uncomfortable. Now, this is the interesting part of this movie. It was chosen as part of a 2019 Blacklist, an annual compendium of the most liked unproduced scripts that has included eventual Oscar winners like Jojo Rabbit, Argo, and Juno. So I've always found that interesting that every year they take these scripts that some people seem to like, but that don't get produced. And it always makes you wonder, well, I wonder why these scripts that everyone likes don't get produced. And in watching this, I sort of realized why. Because while the idea is interesting, the execution of the idea is not successful. And this is very right in your face. The white people are the bad people. The black people are the ones who are being oppressed. All fine. Same thing with Get Out, but Get Out doesn't wipe your face in it as hard as They Cloned Tyrone. And that's fine. They're all different. We all have different tastes. We all have different wants, different purposes, different feelings of contention and being involved. But for my taste, I prefer a movie like Get Out that lets me make all these connections sort of myself without hitting me over the head with them. Some people need to be hit over the head a little bit more. And you will be hit in the head when you watch They Cloned Tyrone. Well, that's our show today. Had an interesting conversation about art and rehabilitation and deafness and disability. We talked about the actors' strike, and we talked about the color black is the color you wear when you're in New York City. Hey, stay union strong, actors and writers. It's going to be a long haul. And what's waiting for you on the other end of this hopeful future contract is sort of a dark and deepening hole, which we hope there will be an escape. So until next time, I thank you so much for being here. Take care, be well. You know where to find me if you need to find me. Bye.